maybe even before I get to the deep stuff, maybe just for context, for those who don't really know what cerebral palsy is, and I would consider myself as one of them, maybe you can give a definition or an idea of what that is.
Of course. So cerebral palsy is a specific type of physical disability that, to put it very plainly and broadly, if you draw two sets of points, point A and point B, you draw a second set of points, point A and point B. The first set of points, you draw a straight line across, no waves in it whatsoever. That technically represents a normal functioning brain. Okay. The second set of points, you draw a wavy line through it. Now you're talking about somebody that experiences a challenge or a difference similar to cerebral palsy. So that wavy line represents nerve damage in the brain that causes issues with anything from speech to motor control to balance and mobility. Cerebral palsy is one of the most common disabilities in the world, and but how it affects others or how it affects each individual, that's where the range really varies. We're talking about milliseconds after birth. Like those milliseconds can create different things. By a snap of a finger, now you can't talk as well, right? Another snap of the finger, now you can't walk as well. Like it's all sorts of different varieties, and that's what kind of makes the picture of disability kind of a little bit beautiful. Like we're all different, but we're all the same because we all have shared trauma and we've all gone through something together. And I think that's also the beauty of humanity as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was doing like a reflection on the first 50 guests that I've had on this podcast, and I've noticed a common thread, and I kind of coin it as that we're all uniquely common, because we all have, I don't know, different experiences, but at the same time, they translate to the same reaction and the same emotions,
Right.
and that same feeling, and I think that's what makes it really beautiful, because even though I can't appreciate or understand what cerebral palsy is, because I've never experienced it, I can understand how it affects you both positively and negatively, and I think that's the best part about connection, really.
Exactly. Like we're talking about empathy at that point, right? Creating that connection, and that brings the walls down. Now we can actually have a conversation and create something beautiful from it, and that's really something that I've tried to harp on a lot. Is rather than feeling pity or sympathy, like let's talk about empathy. Let's create that connection, because there's power in connection.
Yeah, absolutely. What age did you become fully aware that this was going to impact you and this was going to make you slightly or more different than your peers around you?
I found out pretty quickly because I had a walker growing up, which I called the rage cage. So yeah, and it was pretty much a metal basket around me, except for the front, because your legs move.
Yeah.
But that rattled, clanged, and banged, and everybody heard me coming from a mile away. Hold on real quick. There's going to be a motorcycle that comes by. But yeah, my walls are kind of thin. Yeah.
No worries, man. All good.
I can hear him coming. I'm like, I don't want to talk and say something good and have to try and get over that. But I'm just waiting for him to pass. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I can't hear it on my end. If oh, I do now.
Yeah, there he goes. I'm like, just wait, man. Just wait. He hasn't read it yet. Okay. And there goes another one.
Wow, what a neighborhood.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm right next to a main avenue.
Right.
And so that makes it kind of difficult. But I'm sorry. As far as knowing when I was different, I knew pretty much when I was about 4 or 5. Because people look at you differently. They kind of like raise their eyebrows a little bit and be like, what's going on over there? Like, what's wrong with you? And that was a common question I heard growing up. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And my family would always come back to me when I would ask them these questions. And they'd be like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, Jacob. You're fine. You're a human being. And while that's a beautiful message to to send to a child, it separates a very defining factor in your identity, and it separates the disability and the humanity. Rather than bringing it together to create a whole picture, now it's two separate things, and it kind of creates this crisis where you're trying to find yourself and you're being told that there's nothing wrong with you, but you're being treated and thrown away like an outcast. And so it was a really difficult line to tread, but I really knew when I was a kid with this rage cage, and just knowing that I was slower than everybody else. Like people would pass me. People would pass me, and I don't like being passed at all, ever. And these kids were running past me, and no matter what I did, they just kept going faster than I ever could. And if you could just imagine that, no matter what you could do, no matter what you did, you were always going to be passed. Like that was so frustrating. Like that can really mess with you.
Yeah. I want to discuss that in a bit, but I just want to bring it back to the point you mentioned about, how people would say, "Hey, what's wrong with him?" when they asked your parents.
Mm-hmm.
I have two questions to ask about that. Number one, um, how did they ask it in a form of, in a sympathetic way? Like, they cared about you and they were just wondering what was wrong, and, they felt that empathy, or was it more like a judgmental thing? Like, oh, what's going on here?
Right. That's a good one. I would think it kind of was like a fine line. Like there was pity in their questions because they would ask me directly. So they'd be like, "What's wrong with you? Like, does it hurt? I mean, like, did you fall? Did you break something? Like," and I'm feeling completely fine and I'm ready to play ball. Like I'm ready to play games. And then like these questions come and you're a child, you don't know how to answer them, but you do your best. You're like, "Well, there's nothing wrong with me. What's wrong with you?" Um, and I would take these questions back to my family and my parents who raised me, and now as an adult, they didn't know how to answer that. They didn't know how to answer that, but they would always say, "There's nothing wrong with you," which is true because you're a human being and we're all different. We're all living in the same world. You know, time affects everybody the same. So
Yeah,
um, that was something that they did a really good job of. Was they always tried to make me see myself as an equal to the man beside me or the woman beside me, or gender neutral, they them
yeah,
beside me.
yeah.
Um, and so that was a really special thing. Uh, but yeah, there was a little bit of sympathy mixed in, but sometimes there was a little bit of empathy. I think it really just kind of depended on the interaction that I had with that individual.
Right. And knowing what you know now, I mean, you realize that this thing doesn't really define you. What is a good way for people to approach you and to find out what you have in a way that doesn't, I don't know, doesn't make it sound like they take pity on you, but they appreciate you for what you are, or who you are, sorry.
Yeah, I would think that just focus on asking the question of how would I like to be approached if I was in his shoes. That creates the connection upon which you can ask the appropriate question, because everybody's going to be different. I'm a very open individual. I will share my story. I don't have a problem with it. I've accepted every facet of it. But that's me. That's not others who have similar differences or similar challenges that don't necessarily want to share those things because it could be a very sensitive topic. Like sharing medical history, sharing experiences that are rather damaging or haven't healed fully yet. Maybe they are not ready to share those things. So I would say, we talked about it earlier, empathy is the number one way to go. What would I like to hear, or how would I like to be approached if this was a sensitive topic for myself? If you do it that way, then you can come from a place of like learning, a place of appreciation, and you can ask the questions that really create a conversation and a connection with that person. Because I'll tell you from my own experience, all I want to do is connect with you. I want to connect with you. I want to share in the experiences of life with you as a human being with the same eyes, ears, nose, heart, and mind. So I think that putting that humanity into the question, I think would be a really powerful thing.
Yeah. Your passion is infectious, man. I mean, I'm glad I'm glad you're in the business of motivation and raising awareness for this, because I mean that energy is not easily replicated, I must say.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. I just
Uh,
try to be myself.
well, that's awesome.
Thank
What
you.
what what are some adversities that you've experienced that, I suppose we may not appreciate or even understand, from childhood all the way to now doing what you do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say that I've learned how to create a connection between my own experiences and yours. So I'll use words like I have been abused. That creates connection. Like there's a lot of people that can resonate with that. Like the adversities of depression. A lot of people can resonate with that. You and I recently spoke that you've had your own challenges, and I could resonate with your challenges because I've experienced it in my own ways. The only difference is how you interpreted yours and how I interpreted mine. But there's still that connection there. Like I understand you a little bit, not fully, but I
Yeah.
still get it. Right. So I guess the answer to your question is there are certain things that are difficult to understand, like having to think about balancing every day, just taking one step and putting one foot in front of the other, and having to focus on that aspect from getting from point A to point B. That is something that I have to focus on. Like every day I have to wake up, I have to have a plan about how I'm going to get out of bed and get to the bathroom. And then I have to have a plan about how I'm going to get in the grocery store and get out of the grocery store. Like before I even get in the door, I already have a plan of how I'm going to maneuver through those stores, those aisles, and how to not put myself in those situations where I could be prone to a fall in public. And when that happens, let me tell you, the world has ended for everybody around me, and they think that that I have died and gone to another dimension. And that's it's embarrassing, to feel like I have created this center of attention that necessarily isn't wanted. And you just have to like tell people like, wait, back up, back up, back up. It's okay. My arm is not broken. I am not broken. This just happens. I just need my space. Just let me stand up. Unless my arm is literally over my head and behind my ear, like broken, that just it's okay. We're okay. It's okay. you know.
Man, I love that. Like, but that's so interesting to me because on one end, every day you're thinking about how am I planning these things that we take for granted, right? Like getting from point A to point B. And yet on the other hand, here you are surfing, doing all these I'm not sure if it's accurate to call them extreme sports, but just, some
Oh, that's
level of,
accurate.
yeah,
That's
okay,
accurate.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, so extreme sports, right? Like, so that to me is incredibly fascinating because how do you get from, being so incredibly focused about, your day-to-day life to things that even people like me, well, I mean, like just the ordinary person, I don't know if ordinary is the right word, and I apologize
That's
if
okay.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
yeah, but like how do you go from being conscious about these things to just being so carefree and pursuing these kind of sports?
so yeah, you're asking a very good question, and it's okay. That I understand that the intention of what you're trying to ask, you're trying to bridge the gap, and that's the
Yes.
most important thing. I don't take offense to that. What I take offense to is ignorance. Ignorance is different. Um, what I will say to answer your question is there's been a lot of routine. There's been a lot of training from a young age. So I've had the opportunity to work with some very incredible people, including my family and parents that have pushed me to be very independent, very mobile, and kind of live life with a very freedom mindset. Like, if you're going to do what you want to do in this life, you've got to earn it. You've got to put in the time. You got to put in the effort. You got to put in the work to get to where you want to be. So what I do now, what you see now, is 25 years of hard work on what works for my body. And you still are honing it every day. Like, there are things that I need to work on all of the time to get myself better, healthier. My diet could be better. My stretching routines could be a little bit better. There's all sorts of holes I can poke in it. But the important thing is that you stay consistent and that you stay working on it and you don't get lazy. Because lazy is it's very, very easy to stay laying in bed and picking the next Netflix show to watch and just binge watching that. Like, I'm going to be
Absolutely.
honest and say that there's definitely days where I've watched a full series of something in a weekend because I didn't move a muscle really. But
Well,
I
we
always
all
make
have that.
sure. Yeah, of course. Like, I'm an athlete, I'm an entrepreneur, and I work really hard. But I also know that there are days where I ain't getting out of bed, and I'm like, "Where's the chips at?" Um, and but it's really just about consistency.
Right.
That is what the number one facet is for getting through, and not focusing on the day to day minutia. Like, it's just routines and applying those routines to the different facets of life. So the extreme sports, like, I just plugged my routines of getting from point A to point B into like getting out to the surf. But that also comes from my mindset of like, I want to push my boundaries. I want to keep pushing forward. Like, I have that will, that drive to be like, I want that freaking wave, so I'm gonna go get the freaking wave. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. And what about, because I know athletes, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with some, Olympic athletes for this podcast, and they always talk about this point where everything becomes mechanical and they stop thinking about that process. And if they're on a mountain bike, or if they're dribbling a basketball, they stop thinking. It's reflex. Does that happen for you as well, even though you're working with cerebral palsy?
Yeah, I definitely would say so in my everyday life and also in the ocean. But there are days where it's difficult, like, because I'm having to think about a lot of facets that are happening in the water. The water is very dynamic. It's extremely dynamic, and it can change in about a minute or two. One, it could be flat, completely calm, beautiful, gorgeous, like an Instagram post. And then the next moment, it could be raging, trying to kill you. And you're asking yourself, why am I out here? What the hell was I thinking? The next minute. But there's also in each moment, in each of those situations, there is still a sense of peace. It's I know it's very crazy to say, but there is still a sense of peace in each of those moments. When you're staring at a big wave coming right at your face, there is a sense of peace there where you're going to decide whether to go after it or you're going to let it do what it wants to you. And that's, I think, a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Um, you decide where you are and what you want to do. And that's a very empowering aspect. When you have the sense and the power of choice, then you become far more capable, far more empowered, far more motivated to take on things that you didn't think you were capable of.
Right. It's interesting that you brought that up as a metaphor for life. And I'm curious, what were some of your dreams growing up? Like, what were your aspirations, and what did you want to be? And how did that change over time, and based on your experiences in life?
Yeah, um, this may surprise a few people, but what I wanted to be growing up was in the military. I had a very uh, high high, what's the word I'm looking for? Esteem for those who served, for those who gave their sacrifices for others. That held a lot for me, and I wanted to lead. And I had a library full of military books, logistics, and also leadership. So I read the Iliad when I was 12. I read the Odyssey when I was 13. So those are very, very intense reads as a child. Um, um, but I took lessons from those, and I read about Julius Caesar when I was 13, 14. Like, those people all gave me lessons of life leadership and how to, conduct myself. But I wanted to be in the military when I was a child. I realized that that wasn't going to happen. I even went to military night when I was a senior in high school, and my mom was still like supporting that, but I think she needed me to see that this was not going to be possible. And that was a tough pill to swallow. And then, I transitioned over to sports. I wanted to be an athlete. Well, that wasn't going to happen because I was excluded from participation at an early age. So rather than conceding defeat, I focused on contributing. I was like, where can I contribute? Where can I be a part of something? And that's where I discovered, being in a front office administrator, equipment management, those types of things. It was tough because I knew I was an athlete inside and I was very capable in my own world. But in the outside world, I was not. I was seen as a liability, too weak, too slow, too limited. So it was a really difficult line to really toe. But like I said, I focused on contributing rather than conceding. And so that really kind of drove my career from 17 till about 28. I really progressed. I became a coach, worked with at-risk youth for a very long time, was very, very successful at it. I worked in professional sports with the LA Galaxy and MLS side. And
Nice.
I also was working in Division One sports at the same time. So things were progressing very well. But I also was dealt a huge, huge blow to that career when I had my superior that had given me a shot. He stated that I do not have the ability or the experience to work with athletes. Now, mind you, before that time, I had also tried out for the USA Paralympic squad in soccer. I also competed for USA track in a qualifier to be on the team. But those really weren't my sports of choice. I ended up getting really, really injured in Paralympic soccer. I partially tore my hip flexor and sprained both my ankles, and I still played with those injuries because I had a football mentality. I was like, you just shut up and you go. You
Yeah.
put the paint in the box, you put the box in the outside the window, and you close the window. Like, and that really made things hard. But that was, you know, that was my mentality. But then to be dealt that hammer blow, of like not having the ability or experience to work with athletes when I knew that that was not the case, it became abundantly clear in that moment that I was living a life dictated by others. I had allowed others to tell me and allow my mind to be influenced that I can't be a professional athlete, so I shouldn't even try. I should just try to work in sports as a coach because I have a disability, so therefore it's going to dictate everything around me. That was really tough. And I had not acknowledged the pain that had been building up inside of me for years and the suffering that had been building up inside of me for years, that I had been seen as incapable and even worse, inadequate. So once you become inadequate, now we're talking about, man, like that's a big, big barrier to fulfilling identity and pushing yourself. And I had a breakdown, a serious, serious breakdown. And I had to rebuild my whole image, how I saw myself. But thankfully I had people around me that truly cared about who I was, that had zero agenda, that just wanted to see me succeed, and they actually believed in the potential of who I was. And they just said simple things like, who says you can't be a professional athlete? I've seen you work out. I know what you do. I know how hard you push yourself. Like, let's start a GoFundMe. Let's create a brand for you. Like, let's get you surfing professionally, because I've seen you surf. You know what you're doing. And so that's pretty much how what I do now came about. Was literally people just taking the time to say, you can, and I will help you, and just giving little help here and there. And that created what I'm doing now. And I'm eternally grateful for that. Because had I continued doing what I'm doing, had I continued doing what everybody else told me to do, I would have taken my life. Because I would have been unhappy. I would have been broken. I would have been living a 9-to-5 job, wearing a Dwight t-shirt from the office, even eating TV dinners every night, but having no one around me because people wouldn't want to deal with my crap. Misery loves company, and you don't want to be miserable. Like, you don't want to be miserable. I guarantee you can easily find everybody who wants to be miserable. What's hard is finding those people that love to be happy and want the best for you.
Yeah.
And once you find those people, you hold on to them. But if I stayed in that moment, I probably would have decided that life is not for me. And I actually envisioned that. I saw that. That was not healthy. So I knew I had to change.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really insightful thing to hear. What did you have to do mentally to change your mindset from a life being dictated by others to a life that you're dictating for yourself?
I constantly ask the question, what do I want? That's what I ask myself all the time. What do I want? What am I willing to do? How am I going to get this done?
Yeah.
And I keep answering that question over and over and over again, because those are check-ins. You have to check in with yourself. If you're not happy, then change. Why would you stay unhappy? There's no point in that.
Yeah.
Now, when it involves a relationship or things like that, somebody that you're trying to work with as a team member, then work it out, compromise. If it's too much compromise, if you're not happy, if you're still not happy after putting in that work and that effort, then yeah, maybe it's time to go in a different direction. But yeah. It's if you are on your journey and you are unhappy, change. It doesn't take very much. It just takes one step, and you can do it. If I can do it, and I was told that I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, and my life was supposed to be stacking shelves in a warehouse, making minimum wage. If I can do that, and where I was supposed to not be walking by the time I was 16, if I can do all of this, then what is possible for you? What is truly possible for you? I would say the sky. The sky is the limit. And the sky keeps going, people. The sky keeps going. Doesn't stop.
It's kind of ironic that people who put you down and say that you can't be an athlete somehow think that that it's still within your limits to stack shelves when they both require physical activity and I mean it doesn't make any sense. But I think what I really like about what you said is also about the having that community that supports you. And I'm curious, like, was that something you found instantly through this journey, or was that something you had to be conscious about picking and choosing?
Yeah, I would say that certain people will come in and out of your life. but the ones that care the most will stay and they'll want to be part of it. But finding your community is a process. Like that doesn't just come overnight. You have to like build, you have to try. And I want to provide some perspective here for those that are listening. Process can sometimes mean pain. Like you might get hurt by developing your community, but that will make you stronger in the long run. I can tell you that I've experienced some times where I was hurt by people, but that didn't stop me from moving forward. There will be times where you go down. There will be times where you hit a valley, but there's also from the valley, there's a peak. And that kind of looks like a wave when you draw it out. It looks like there's a lot of ups and downs. How you navigate that and how you stay consistent through that is what's going to matter. So if your valleys aren't too low and your peaks aren't too high, you kind of keep moving in a consistent direction where you start experiencing less and less lows and more highs. But it's okay to experience the lows. That's natural. That's human. We are supposed to feel these emotions, go through these experiences, because that's what gives us our maturity. That's what gives us our humanity and our empathy. And empathy is the goal.
Yeah. Wow. it's interesting how all these ties to everything that you're trying to do. So I suppose a natural question I have from all of this is, why is it important for you to share your story?
I don't think it's important to share my story. I think it's important that I bridge the gap. And if I have to share my story from that, then that's what I'll do. I want to create connection. I think that that's most important. Whether it comes from my story or someone else, that doesn't matter to me. What I want is access. What I want is empathy and community. Because we can't get through life on our own. Like babies actually need to be held to live. You and I had to be held in order to get to where we are today. That required somebody else holding us and giving us their time. So we need each other in this life.
Yeah.
You know, I need you in ways that you need me. It's like it's a copacetic relationship. So, I need you to listen to my story in order to gain something from it and move forward. So it's really like a dance. It's a dance and it's a balance.
Yeah. What are some of the interesting results that have come out of you being really open about your story? And when I say results, I mean both results and opportunities and experiences that have come out of you pursuing what you're pursuing now, just being open about all of this.
Yeah, I think one of the best things I've experienced from doing what I'm doing now is how many people I've gotten to meet and how many experiences I've been able to achieve from it. I've gotten to travel, see amazing, beautiful places, meet amazing, beautiful people, and also share my story with a multitude of different avenues that I kind of giggle every time I think about it. I'm like, wow, this is happening. But at the same time, like, you have to expect that of yourself. Like, you are capable, you are powerful, and you can do it. But it's hard when you look across the room and you see somebody who's really, really famous and you're sharing the room with them, but you have to believe in yourself. Like, you have to have that belief, but that takes time to grow. But I would definitely say the people that I've gotten to meet is definitely number one. And also just that empowering self-confidence that I've gained from owning the story that is me. You have to own your story. All of the good and all of the not so good. Accept your flaws. I know I'm stubborn. I'm stubborn as a rock. I know that about myself. But that also creates this really, really incredible drive to get things done and to just do it. Because I'm not about a talk about it, I'm about a doer. I do it, you know, because it doesn't make sense for me to talk about things if I'm not going to apply what I talk about.
Yeah. I think that's probably the most relatable thing for me, at least, because it's true. Once I started owning my story, that self confidence just naturally builds up because that story no longer defines you. It's a part of you and it's a part that you feel comfortable with sharing, but no amount of external thought or comments by others would dictate the way you feel about that story of yours. And that's I couldn't agree more. And
Yeah.
the other thing you talked about was really just to be comfortable knowing that your story can be part of the process of closing the gap, but it's not the only story. And it's trying to find ways to empower others to do the same thing so that we can all close the gap. And I don't know, it's just something really powerful in what you said, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. I do the best I can. I'm not perfect. I have flaws, but I keep trying despite those flaws and despite those mistakes. Because, we're all human.
Yeah.
We're all human. And I am, I don't see myself as better than anybody else or less than anybody else. It's just me and there's just you. So I'm in it with you. And that's something that I really pride myself on. It's like, if you're taking grenades in the trenches, I will jump in the trench with you and we'll get through it together. And if you need me to help pull you out, I'll pull you out, man, because I'm not going to leave you there,
Yeah.
because that's something that I'm really prideful on, because I remember what it's like. I will never forget what it's like to feel alone and to feel like nobody understands what you're going through. Like, I've never forgotten about that, and I always try to hold those memories inside. So I try to keep my door open. I try to give the energy that I can, and I try to be available when I can.
Yeah.
But there's also the time where you need to take care of yourself too.
Yeah. I mean, in your words, right? Contribute instead of concede. I mean,
Exactly. Perfect.
I'm going to remember that, man. That's really short and sharp and succinct and everything you need to know about being a human in this world, really.
Yeah.
Um, I have one final question for you, and it's the question that I ask most, if not all, my guests, and it's a little bit of a reflective one. What life lesson has taken you the longest to learn?
Yeah, I read this question and I was super, super excited about it. I was like, ooh, Nick knows what he's doing. I like it. This was I was impressed, but in a very positive way. And I was looking forward to the interview almost immediately, because there's very few people that will ask this question. And I think that that's one we touched on earlier, is owning the story. And you've really got to own who you are throughout life. And that means you have to take in the mistakes that you've made, the flaws that you have, and you know what you need to work on. But you also have to accept the good shit. You have to accept the really good stuff about you. Like, it has to create this beautiful picture of you. And the moment you can accept that and not really let others heavily influence how you conduct yourself and what you do, then you're empowered. That's the lesson that's taken me the longest to learn, is owning the story, owning who you are, And I think that that's a continuous process.
Yeah.
That will always be a continuous process, I believe, because that speaks to the humanity of you. Because humans are perfectly imperfect creatures. So, and it's okay if you haven't accepted your lessons yet. Like, it's a process, and I do believe that you can get there.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I mean, Jacob, you're really inspiring. So before we end this, I just want to, for my audience who are really interested in hearing your story, what's the best way they can find you?
The best way they can find me is through Instagram and YouTube. So I have a social media platform that I've built, prone2ride.com, prone to ride on Instagram, and Jacob Pacheco on YouTube. Um, I have all of my information listed on my website, prone2ride.com, if anybody wants to go check it out. I've got my YouTube there, my Instagram there, so you can watch the videos. And we're currently doing a 30 waves in 90 days challenge while also answering the question of, is life accessible? And we're creating a feature film with this project. So it's a big, big undertaking, and I've met brilliant people along the way, surfed some amazing waves. So join us, join me. I want you there. Send me a message. I'm always very open. I try to contact or respond to as many messages and comments as I can because I believe engagement is very, very important. And I feel like you need to be heard because, as you know, like, I want you to know that you are heard and that someone cares about you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. When does the film come out? Or when do you
We're
think it
still
will?
in the process of producing and editing. So we're going through that process right now. We should have a firmer date hopefully in the next couple of months. But do know
Yeah,
that we are creating it, we are filming it, and we've already interviewed multiple people. So it's happening. It's
yeah.
happening.
Awesome, man. Let me know, and I'll blast it out on my socials as well.
Of course, my man. Thank you
Uh,
very much.
Yeah, and I'll put your social links and your website links on the podcast description, so people, it'll be easier for them to find it. Because I watched some of your YouTube videos, man. It's really, not only, I mean, the stories are great, but I mean the filming is just as, I mean, it's very professional. So I mean,
Thank you.
yeah. So yeah, I look forward to sharing that with people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let me ask you a question then from my end. What did you like the most about the YouTube content?
So there was one in particular where you spoke with, I don't know, was she your friend, and you spoke about, cerebral palsy and what it was experiencing that through like the different stages in your life. Do you know the one I'm
Yeah,
talking about? Yeah.
you're talking about the main one, my life, my story with CP, right? My
Yes,
CP
yes,
story.
that's right. That's the one.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
she your friend?
She was my friend. Yes, she is my friend.
Yeah,
She is a Paralympic basketball player.
that's right. Yes,
Yeah, she's a gold medalist. She's her name's Megan Blanc. She's famous. She's been on the Nike commercial, which you probably have seen.
yes.
Um, so yeah, she was there. We had a long discussion about it. But there will be more better content than that. Like, I look back on that and I was like, yeah, that was okay. I could do much better now. It's
Yeah,
it's a process, right? But thank you. I appreciate that. Is there any
yeah.
other ones that recently that you watched?
I enjoyed the vlog, excuse me, the vlog ones where you take us on a journey of
Mhm.
your surf expeditions. And the reason
Mhm.
why, it's not because I mean, it's just simply because I've never surfed, and
Mhm.
I find that like a really elegant art form,
Mhm.
and the fact that you do it as well is just, it's really cool. But I think more importantly, the friends that you bring along, I mean, all of them, it's really a testament to having that shared experience. And I think that was the first thing that got me to want to reach out to you, because I found that most of those vlogs is almost a testament to the fact that you're just part of I mean, it's a part of life, you're just doing what you love. And regardless of whatever it is that you've experienced, it doesn't matter. You've got friends, you've got a passion, and you just want to share it with the world. And for me, that was like the one that caught my attention the most. So actually, to be
Thanks,
honest,
man.
I knew there was a disability, but I didn't know you had cerebral palsy until the video with Megan Blanc.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, because it's about the humanity, right? It's
Yeah.
about like that's just a part of who I am.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. That's what I was going for.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm glad I got the right message.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for your kind words as well.
Of course, yeah, and thank you for sharing your story. It's been amazing, and I hope to have you on sometimes. In the future. Maybe talk about the film or something like that. If you're
Of
down for that.
course, of course. I'm always down. Thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate your time too,
Awesome.
and
You
thank you for
too.
working with me.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Jacob. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.